I don't even know how to tell this story, because I still haven't fully processed what happened. How I got here, how I lost control. Maybe I should start from the very beginning, because it all started so ordinarily. I am 25 years old. I grew up in a conservative family, a woman who knew her boundaries, devoted to her faith, with clear lines. At least, I was. Until that day. I had traveled abroad to visit a friend I hadn't seen in years. She had gotten married and built a new life. I was going to stay with them for a month, catch up, and explore a new country. But I never could have predicted where it would lead. My friend greeted me cheerfully, showed me around the house, and helped me settle into my room. Her husband was polite, kind, and distant at first. Everything was as it should be. But that night, everything changed. I woke up thirsty in the middle of the night. Thinking everyone was asleep, I headed to the kitchen. I wasn't wearing my hijab, I had already retreated to my room and relaxed. Feeling comfortable, I wore a light pajama set. My shoulder was exposed, maybe I was a bit too at ease. But who would see me? That was my thought. I reached for a glass and was filling it with water when I felt a presence behind me. A strange unease settled in my stomach, and before I could even take a sip, a silhouette appeared at the doorway. Him. My friend's husband. He was watching me. When our eyes met, I felt a shiver run down my spine. His gaze was different. More intent, lingering, more dangerous. He didn't speak for several seconds. Neither did I. Time seemed frozen. Then, he cleared his throat and whispered, "Did I wake you?" His voice was strange. Dry, restrained. I stood there, saying nothing. I set my glass down and hurried back to my room. But I could still feel his gaze following me. My heart was pounding wildly. At that moment, I knew something had changed. After that night, something began to shift. He was different. Subtle gestures, barely noticeable but definitely there. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe I was overreacting. But my instincts told me the truth. He was looking at me differently. While eating together, he would accidentally brush his hand against mine. He wouldn't take his eyes off me while talking. Even in my friend's presence, there was an odd tension in the air. And then, another night. My friend was out. I was in the living room, reading a book. He was sitting in the corner, watching TV. But I could feel his attention elsewhere. As I turned the pages, I felt his gaze on me. Suddenly, he spoke. "Are you getting used to being here?" I looked at him. He smiled slightly, but his eyes, they were drawing me in. The expression in them changed everything. A shiver ran down my spine. I tried to keep my composure and nodded. But I couldn't escape. Before I could fully process it, he was next to me. When his hand brushed against my wrist. That night, there was no turning back. Everything spiraled out of control. I had crossed my own boundaries. That forbidden temptation was eating me alive, but at the same time, I couldn't stop. Was this a game? A dangerous attraction? A moment of weakness? I don't know. But one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. At first, my friend didn't suspect anything. But as time passed, she began to sense the tension between us. The subtle glances, the questions, the intuition. A woman's instincts never fail. One day, she pulled me aside. Her eyes locked onto mine, and she whispered, "Is there something going on between you two?" My world stopped. My breath caught. I didn't know what to say. But my eyes. They said it all. The only thing I knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. In the end, I couldn't bear it anymore. The guilt was consuming me like a relentless fire. I confessed everything to my friend. As the words spilled from my mouth, the disappointment in her eyes was far worse than any anger. She didn't forgive me. Our friendship was over. The pain in her gaze was the harshest punishment I could ever receive. A few days later, I returned to my country. On that plane, staring out of the window, I felt an indescribable regret and an overwhelming sense of loss. Some mistakes can never be undone. And some friendships can never be repaired.